The Casey study is about our ability to resist temptation as we progress into adulthood. It's thought that there may be individual differences in our capacity to resist temptation. In 1989, Schroeder and Rodriguez wanted to see how long children could resist one cookie in order to receive 2 cookies. It's believed that we put controls in place to suppress our inappropriate thoughts which interfere with our appropriate ones. So, for example, if you focus on the rewarding aspects or hot features of an item, you're less likely to be able to resist it. So, thinking of the taste or how it feels to eat a cookie. However, if you think more objectively or on cool features, you're more likely to resist the inappropriate thoughts about eating it. That's focusing on things like weight or the shape. With this comes the idea that our ability to resist temptation may follow us into adulthood. So, resisting urges like texting after a first date may be easier if you could resist eating the cookie as a child. Hot and cool each have their own neurocognitive systems associated with recognizing them, the ventral striata and the left inferior frontal gyrus. Cool is cognitive control and hot is desires and emotions. In 2002, Casey showed the inferior frontal gyrus is associated with gratification delay. Also, the ventral striata was involved in immediate rewards. In 2011, the aim was to investigate the extent to which the ability to resist temptation follows people into adulthood, based on social cues at behavioural and neural level. The inferior frontal lobe is also associated with our interpretation and management of facial expressions, and the ventral striata are also associated with the inhibiting of behaviour in complex social interaction. The original sample consisted of 562 4-year-olds who took the original gratification delay test during the 1960s and 70s from Stanford Nursery School, 155 who completed a self-control scale in their 20s, 135 who did the same in their 30s, and all those with above or below average were contacted, taking it down to 117. Of these, 23 males and 36 females, 59 total participants, took part in Experiment 1, and 13 males and 14 females, 27 total, in Experiment 2. Of the 59 people who took part in Experiment 1, there were 32 high delayers and 27 low delayers. They performed the go or no-go tasks where they had to push a button or not push a button. This version of the task included male and female faces with neutral expressions. One sex was the go, the other sex was the no-go. This experiment was done with a pre-programmed laptop in the own home of the participants, and it was carefully standardized. Each face appeared for 500 milliseconds, followed by a 1-second interval between the faces. It was pseudo-randomized with 120 go and 40 no-go.
Overall, both groups were highly accurate in their correct responses to no-go trials in both cool and hot conditions, 99.8% and 99.5% correct respectively. Low delayers were slightly more likely to respond mistakenly in no-go trials and performed slightly worse than high delayers in hot versions of the task. However, low delayers identified at 4 years of age showed greater difficulty suppressing their responses to happy faces than high delayers.
Of the 26 people who participated in Experiment 2, 15 were high delayers and there were 11 low delayers, 5 male, 10 female, 7 male and 4 female respectively. They were scanned with an fMRI while completing a hot version of a go, no-go task like in Experiment 1. The stimuli was projected on a screen with a button in front of them for recording reactions and response times. The hot version of the task in this case was male and female faces with exaggerated positive or negative facial features. Each face appeared for 500 milliseconds with intervals ranging from 2 to 14.5 seconds, differing from the first experiment. There were 35 go and 13 no-go presented in each run. They collected imaging data for 26 no-go trials and 70 go trials per expression.
Experimenters found no significant difference between the 2 delay groups on reaction times in correct go trials. Accuracy across both groups was very high for the go trials, as in Experiment 1. Similarly, low delayers had higher false alarm rates in no-go trials, 15.5% false alarm rate. As expected, the right inferior frontal gyrus appeared to be critical in withholding responses, with the low delayers showing reduced activity in this region during the no-go trials, as compared to high delayers during no-go trials. There was high levels of activity in the reward-related region, the ventral striatum, for low delayers compared to the high delayers participants. This was most prominent during happy no-go trials for the low delayers.
The conclusions of Casey are 1. That resistance to temptation is a stable characteristic in an individual over time. 2. Cognitive control is influenced by contextual factors in alluring situations. And 3. Ventral photostriatal circuitry supports resistance to temptation, with increased activity in the inferior frontal gyrus and more activity in the ventral striatum. Casey took place under lab conditions. It was possible to control the extraneous variables. Experiment 1 used a standardised programme, but it took place in the home of the participants, so there might have been distractions around them. For data, the data gathered were quantitative, which allowed for direct comparisons of the conditions, but there was no qualitative data. You could observe differences between high and low delayers, but couldn't say why this was. For ethical considerations, informed consent was gained, and the fMRI is a low-risk test. It's not harmful to participants. For validity, Casey has low ecological validity. The test was very artificial. We don't encounter facial expressions like that in real life. The MRI may have had an impact on people's response, and brains may behave differently when not under artificial conditions. For reliability, Casey is fairly reliable due to the method used. The fMRI scanner means that if repeated, it will most likely yield similar results. In terms of sampling bias, 562 participants were there originally, but this study in particular was limited to those who attended one nursery during a specific time. It was geographically limited, and not all of the original participants took part in the final study, meaning there were a much smaller number of participants, and thus it's biased to a small group. The study largely isn't ethnocentric because it's independent of cultural differences. However, if nurtured differently, there may be some difference in the self-control displayed by participants. The practical applications are our ability to apply self-control is highly impacted by our contextual cues. Situational and individual factors can influence self-control, showing our ability to delay immediate gratification for long-term goals.